Right then, Forest faithful. Are you ready for what's been happening at our beloved city ground? Because I've got information here that'll make you understand why this moment could be absolutely pivotal for Nottingham Forest's future. And I'm not having you on. 3 massive developments have just exploded in the Forest world, and every single one of them will directly impact how our side performs over the coming months. We're talking about movements that could completely transform our season, for better or for worse. The first bombshell? A striker who could cost more than 20 million quid is being seriously courted by the board. This isn't just any player, mind. It's someone who's already proven his worth in Spain, and who our new gaffer believes is the missing piece of the attacking puzzle. The second? Our manager, Ange Postecoglou, has finally revealed what his philosophy will be in charge of the team, and blimey, it's nothing conventional. His declarations about how he wants Forest to play will surprise loads of people, especially those who thought he'd be more cautious. And the third bombshell, the truth behind all those summer signings. 13 players arrived at the club, but did all these acquisitions make sense? And more importantly, is the current squad sufficient for the objectives we've got? But before I reveal all these details, tell me something in the comments. Do you reckon Forest needs another expensive striker, or should we back the players we've already got? Because that answer will define much of what happens in January. Like this video now, leave your comment about what you think of these movements, and come with me to discover the first revelation that'll stir up any supporter worth their salt. Because what you're about to hear about this £22 million striker will make you understand why our board is so chuffed. He plays up front, he's 25 years old, and he's having a blinder of a season in Spain. But what's emerged about him in the last few hours could completely change the direction of our transfer business come January. I'm talking about serious movements, with figures that catch the eye and genuine interest from our board. Right, I'm talking about Isaac Romero, Sevilla striker who's become Nottingham Forest's primary target for the next transfer window. And when I say primary target, I'm not having a laugh. The board are prepared to shell out between 20 and 25 million euros, something around 22 million quid, to bring the Spaniard to the city ground. What makes this situation even more interesting is that Forest aren't just dreaming about this signing. They've already started making concrete preparations to make this transfer happen. The board believe Romero has exactly the profile that Ange Postecoglou is after. A versatile striker who can play both centrally and out wide, with decent finishing and the ability to create chances. And have a look at the numbers that justify all this interest. Romero has already bagged 2 goals in just 4 La Liga games this season. Might seem modest, but considering he only managed 4 goals in the entire previous campaign, being halfway to that tally at the start of the season shows impressive development. But what catches the eye most isn't just the numbers, it's the player's character. Oliver Torres, who was his teammate at Sevilla, described Romero in a way that explains much of Forest's interest. More than just a good player, Isaac is a good teammate. A good lad, super humble, super hardworking, and in the end, fortune smiles on people like that. This profile of a humble, grafting player fits perfectly with the philosophy Postecoglou wants to implement at Forest. It's no wonder the Australian gaffer has already given the green light for the board to go after the Spanish. Striker, the situation becomes even more favorable because Sevilla need to flog players to balance the books. This means an offer of 22 The 22 million quid might be sufficient to convince the Spanish club to negotiate, particularly considering Romero isn't deemed untouchable in their squad. Now, the big question is, does Forest actually need another striker? After all, in the summer we brought in Callum Muendo. We've got Chris Wood and other forwards in the squad, and it's exactly this doubt that leads me to the next revelation, which has everything to do with the attacking strategy Postecoglou wants to implement. Because what he said about his playing philosophy will explain perfectly why Romero makes so much sense right now. Our new gaffer has finally come clean about how he intends the team to play, and I can guarantee his declarations go against everything loads of people expected. We're not talking about a manager who parked the bus or relies solely on defensive solidity. Right, Ange Postecoglou has made it crystal clear what his philosophy will be at Nottingham Forest, and the key word is attack. The Australian hasn't come to the city ground to set up defensively or play it safe. He wants a Forest that takes the game to teams, seizes the initiative, and goes at the opposition. During his official unveiling, Postecoglou was categorical in outlining his attacking principles. The manager expressed complete determination to implement his high-tempo style immediately at the City ground, without any settling-in period or gradual transition. And when I say immediately, that's literally it. Remember when he said it will be Wednesday? Well, Postecoglou doesn't believe in slow changes or gradual adaptation. He wants his philosophy to be seen in the very first match, whether that's the Carabao Cup or the Premier League. But what exactly is this philosophy? Postecoglou works with a system based on high pressing, quick ball distribution through the fullbacks, midfielders who move constantly to create space, and forwards who interchange positions during matches. It's football that demands a lot physically, but can be devastating when it clicks. The interesting thing is this philosophy explains perfectly why the interest in Isaac Romero makes so much sense. Postecoglou needs versatile forwards who can play in various positions and have finishing ability both from inside the box and from distance. Romero fits this profile like a glove. Moreover, Postecoglou's system demands an extensive squad because the pace of play is very intense. Having Chris Wood as first choice is brilliant, but at 33, the Kiwi might not be able to maintain this tempo in every match of the season. Hence the need for alternatives like Romero. Another thing that stands out in Postecoglou's declarations is the confidence. The bloke isn't afraid to take risks, isn't afraid to play attractive football even against supposedly superior opponents. This mentality could be exactly what Forest need to take the next step. But it also raises an important question. Does the current squad have enough players to implement this philosophy? And that's where the importance of analyzing the signings Forest made in the summer comes in, because when you look at the 13 acquisitions that arrived, some things start making sense, but others raise doubts about the club's strategy. And what I'm going to reveal about these signings will show whether Forest are truly prepared for the revolution Postecoglou wants to implement. 13 players arrived at the City ground last summer, but did all these signings make sense? And more importantly, is this revamped squad ready for what Postecoglou intends to implement? Because when you analyze them name by name, some things are impressive and others are concerning. Nottingham Forest completed an absolutely mental summer with 13 new arrivals that completely changed the look of the squad. We're talking about James McAtee, Omari Hutchinson, Dan Ndoye, Arnau Kalimuendo, and a list that seems endless. But the question that won't go away is quality or quantity? Let's start with the successes. James McAtee, who arrived on loan from Manchester City, brought creativity and technique that the midfield desperately needed. Omari Hutchinson, coming from Chelsea, added pace and dribbling ability out wide. Dan Ndoye arrived from Basel with decent European pedigree, and Kalimuendo came from Rennes to be an alternative up front. Besides these more recognized names, Forest also brought in Nicolo Savona from Juventus, who now with Ola Aina's injury could get a chance at right back. Morato arrived to strengthen the defense, and a series of other players who, at least on paper, gave the manager more options. The positive side is this refresh was necessary. Forest needed more alternatives to compete on multiple fronts, and with Europa League participation, having an extensive squad became even more important. But here comes the worrying bit: integration and adaptation time. 13 new players means 13 people who need to understand how the team plays, adapt to their teammates, and find their place in the tactical setup. With Postecoglou only arriving now and wanting to implement his philosophy immediately, this integration becomes even more complex. Another point that catches the eye is some signings appear to have been made more due to market opportunity than specific tactical necessity. Cuiabano, for instance, arrived from Botafogo but has already returned to the Brazilian club on loan, showing not everything went to plan. What does this mean in practice? That despite investing heavily in the market, Forest might still have gaps in the squad, and the possible arrival of Isaac Romero would be further proof of this. If the team genuinely had all the pieces of the puzzle, they wouldn't be considering spending another 22 million quid in January. Additionally, there was Morgan Gibbs-White's contract renewal, which was fundamental to keeping one of the squad's key players. This was probably the most important movement of the entire summer, because losing Gibbs-White would have been a massive blow. The issue is that now, with Postecoglou in charge, these 13 signings are going to be tested in a completely different way. His philosophy demands much more movement, intensity, and tactical versatility. And this leads me to an important reflection about the club's current moment. Were so many changes at once the right strategy? Or should Forest have been more selective and focused on fewer players, but of higher quality? Because what's happening now might give clues about the club's future. Now we reach the crucial point of this entire analysis, because all these movements, Romero's possible signing, Postecoglou's philosophy, the summer's 13 acquisitions, point in one direction. Nottingham Forest are at a crossroads that could define their future over the coming years. Let's be realistic about the club's current moment. We're 10th in the Premier League. After just 3 matches, we've already changed manager, and there's enormous pressure to show all this investment was worthwhile. Postecoglou's arrival represents a final attempt to make this season work with the current squad. What strikes me most is the speed with which everything's happening. Nuno Espirito Santo was sacked practically without warning. Postecoglou arrived and already wants to implement his philosophy immediately, and the board are already planning more spending for January. This shows urgency, but could also show lack of long-term planning. Ola Aina's situation is a perfect example of the problems Forest are facing. The Nigerian fullback was an important piece in the setup, got injured on international duty, and will now be out for 3 months. This forces Postecoglou to improvise with Savona or other players, precisely when he wants to implement a system that demands stability in positions. On the other hand, the European opportunity that's opened up with the Europa League could be exactly what the club needs to take the next step. Postecoglou has experience in continental competitions, and Europe could be the perfect shop window to show Forest are back to stay among the big boys. But there's an elephant in the room we need to discuss: financial sustainability. Spending 22 million quid on Romero after investing heavily in the summer raises questions about financial fair play and the club's capacity to maintain this level of investment if results don't come. The reality is Forest are putting all their chips on a high-risk, high-reward strategy. If it works, the club could establish themselves definitively as a force in the Premier League and Europe. If it goes tits up, they could face serious financial problems and have to flog their main players. What makes me optimistic is seeing Marinakis' determination to make Forest competitive. The Greek owner has already shown he's not afraid to invest, and Postecoglou's appointment shows he's willing to think outside the box. Another positive point is the squad's foundation has quality. Gibbs-White, Wood, Yates, Murillo are players who could make the difference in any Premier League team. The question is making all the pieces fit under Postecoglou's command, and that's where the importance of the coming months comes in. January will be crucial not just for possible signings, but to see if Postecoglou's system actually works with this squad. If it works, Isaac Romero could be the cherry on top. If it doesn't work, but I prefer to be optimistic, Forest have tradition, have investment, have a manager with clear ideas, and have supporters who deserve to see the club fighting for big things again. I just hope all these gambles transform into the results we all want to see. We've reached the end of this analysis, and after everything we've discussed, one question echoes louder than all others. What do these 3 revelations tell us about who Nottingham Forest really are today? Because these movements aren't coincidence. They show a club trying to find their identity in modern football. Isaac Romero's possible signing for 22 million quid, Postecoglou's attacking philosophy, and the summer's 13 acquisitions paint the picture of a Forest that no longer wants to be just a club fighting relegation. We're talking about an ambitious project that wants to compete toe-to-toe with the Premier League's big guns. But is this ambition being channeled properly? Because there's a difference between having ambition and having strategy. And some of the movements we've analyzed today raise questions about whether Forest are being strategic or just reactive. The positive side is we finally have a manager with clear identity. Postecoglou isn't the type who will hide behind excuses or play not to lose. He wants to win, wants to play attractive football, and wants Forest to be protagonists. That's something supporters haven't seen for ages. The question is whether the current squad can sustain this philosophy. And that's where Romero's possible arrival makes sense. It's not just about having another striker. It's about having the right striker for the system Postecoglou wants to implement. But we can't ignore the risks either. Investing so much money without guarantee of sporting return is dodgy. What if for some reason Postecoglou can't implement his philosophy? What if the players don't adapt to the intense pace he demands? These are questions only time will answer, but what I can guarantee is the coming months will be decisive for Forest's future. January will be crucial to see if the board really go after Romero, and the season's second half will show whether all these gambles were worth it. One thing that makes me confident is seeing the club's determination not to settle for little. Forest have history, have tradition, and now have investment. The combination of these three factors could be powerful if properly utilized. And at the end of the day, that's what defines a big club: the capacity to dream big and chase dreams with determination. Forest are doing this, even if not all decisions seem perfect. So, Forest faithful, we've reached the end of another deep analysis of our beloved club. If you've enjoyed this content, give it a like now to help me continue bringing these exclusive insights to you lot. And tell me in the comments, do you reckon Forest should actually spend 22 million quid on Romero? Or would it be better to back the players we've already got and invest the money in other positions? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, because there's loads more brilliant Forest content coming your way. And keep your eyes peeled, because in the next video, I'm going to reveal exclusive information about how Postecoglou intends to line up the team against the Premier League's big sides. And the formations he's testing in training will surprise you a lot. Until next time, and here's to another great moment in our Forest history.